As you move into Module 3 in your Math 143 class, you will discover that you're going to start studying functions and relationships, or in other words, mathematical models. So let's talk about what a mathematical model is, and then move into more specifically how to identify the variables in your model and how to identify one as being independent and the other as being dependent. Before we start, this worksheet is available for you to print out or download on your computer to take notes on as we work through this lesson. So in Module 3, you'll talk about modeling your world. While it may not be possible to predict the future precisely, we needn't go forward blindly. Mathematics provides tools for analyzing relationships between variables and building models that can help us make educated guesses about the future. Although many mathematical models are quite complex, the basic principles are easy to understand. In this module, you will discuss the principles involved in using mathematics to model your world and explore examples of both linear and exponential models. Mathematical models may well have a greater effect on your daily life than almost anything else you've covered in this course so far, because they play such an enormous role in our society today. Indeed, virtually every major decision that we make as citizens today, decisions about economics, tax policies, environmental laws, military policies, and much more, is informed by mathematical models. For example, a real office complex may not look exactly like the scale model used to design it, but the model helps the architects create the design. A road map, or Google Maps, doesn't look at all like a real landscape, but it serves as a model of a road system that can be extremely useful when you travel. How many of us don't log into some kind of map app on our phone when we're going from one place to another that you're not familiar with? The purpose of a mathematical model is similar to that of an architectural model or Google Maps. It represents something real and helps us understand that real thing. More specifically, mathematical models are based on relationships between quantities that can change, such as the relationship between wind speed and stress on a bridge, or the relationship between worker productivity and unemployment. These relationships are described by mathematical tools called functions. In essence, functions are the building blocks of mathematical models. Some mathematical models consist of only a single function, which we can represent with a simple formula or a graph. Other models, such as those used to study Earth's climate, may involve thousands of functions and require supercomputers for their analysis. But the basic idea of a function is the same in all cases. In Math 143, you will be asked to come up with these functions or equations that model these relationships. The first step to being able to write these equations is to identify the variables in the situation. The variables are the things that are changing or varying, and they can be defined as either independent or dependent. So let's look at this first example and see if we can identify the two things that are changing, and a step further, identify one of them as being dependent upon the other, and of course then the other one would be the independent variable. So in our first example, Peter coaches soccer clinics and he charges $15 per player. So the two things that are changing in this situation for Peter are how many players he has sign up for the coaching clinic, and then how much money he's going to make conducting this coaching clinic. So let's let T stand for the total amount of money he makes, and let's let P stand for the number of players that sign up. Which one of these depends upon the other? Or in other words, identify the independent and dependent variable. So, does the amount of money Peter make depend upon the number of players who sign up? Or does the number of players who sign up depend upon the amount of money Peter's going to make? I think my first example makes more sense. Would you agree? The amount of money that Peter makes depends upon how many players sign up. And the amount of money he makes is going to change with the amount of players that he signs up, at the rate of $15 per player. So, if we look at the answer to this problem, the amount of money he makes we identify as the dependent variable because it depends upon the number of players that sign up. So the number of players that sign up is identified as the independent variable. Let's look at a few more examples. In number 1, Mr. Macker's soccer team is having a car wash to raise money for new uniforms. C stands for how many cars are washed, and I stands for how much money they raise. So we've identified the two variables for you. What's left for you to do is identify which one of these depends upon the other. Or in other words, does the amount of cars they wash depend upon how much money they raise, or is it the other way around? Does the amount of money they raise depend upon how many cars they wash? Now, you're not given the specifics this time of what they're charging. However, you still can identify which one depends upon the other. And I think in this case, the latter makes more sense. So the dependent variable is how much money they raise. So I, how much money they raise, depends upon C, how many cars are washed. Let's move on to number 2. In number 2, we have a situation. Tara uses her cell phone a lot, and she gets charged 5 cents a minute. So let's let C stand for the total she pays, and M stand for the number of minutes she uses the phone. So I give you a minute to fill in the blanks. Which one of those, C or M, is dependent, and which one of those is independent? Okay, so for you, did the total she paid depend upon the number of minutes she used the phone, or did the number of minutes she used the phone depend upon the total amount she pays? Hopefully you said that C, the total she pays, was the dependent variable, and M, the number of minutes she uses the phone, was the independent variable. Because the total she pays depends upon the number of minutes she uses, because she's going to pay 5 cents for every minute that she uses. Now, this idea probably seems foreign to you guys because we normally have unlimited minutes, But way back when cell phones were first invented, and yes, I was alive when cell phones were first invented, you paid by the number of minutes you used. So you could have a plan which maybe covered 60 minutes, but every minute after that you were charged at some certain rate. So think about how much you would be charged now if that were the case. Although I will say this, my phone bill was a lot cheaper than it is now. I used to pay, I think my first phone bill, it was $14.99 a month. Can you imagine? And the phone was free. It was a bag phone, so it was so big I had to carry it around in a bag, but it was free, and I only paid $15 a month. So that's kind of unheard of these days. All right, let's move on to number 3. Number 3 says, Yvonne reads about 20 pages a night before she goes to bed. Let's let N stand for the number of nights she has read, and P stand for the total number of pages. So I'll give you just a minute to fill in the blanks. Okay, so the question becomes, does the number of nights she's read depend upon the total number of pages she's read? Or does the total number of pages she read depend upon the number of nights she has read? Hopefully you answered P as the dependent variable, so the total number of pages depends upon N, the total number of nights read. Because if she only reads one night, she's read 20 pages, right? If she reads 2 nights, she's read 40 pages. 3 nights, 60 pages. So the total number of pages depends upon how many nights she's read. So we are going to stop with that example because I think that drives home the idea of independent and dependent variable, and that's all you need to complete that first lesson. So I don't want to give you too much to think of right now. So I think if you understand this pretty well, then you can move into the activity and test your understanding. As always, if you have any questions or need any help, remember that you can reach out to me Monday through Thursday from 10 to 11:15 in my student hour time. Or if that doesn't work for you, email me and we'll set up another time. Good luck as you start in Module 3